You're not lonely because nobody likes you. You're lonely because nobody sees you. And the terrifying part, you've stopped expecting them to. Somewhere along the way, you learn to compress yourself, to take the full, complicated, layered thing that you are and fold it down into something small enough to fit inside small talk. You got good at laughing at the right moments, nodding, saying, "I'm good, you on autopilot." And each time you did it, some quiet part of you watched from a distance and thought, "This isn't it. This is not actually me." You scroll through your phone at night and see people who look deeply connected. Birthday dinners, group photos, weddings, and you don't feel jealous. Exactly. It's more complicated than that. You feel like you're watching a film in a language you never quite learned. Imagine this. You're sitting at dinner with friends. The conversation is easy. Everyone is laughing. And you're laughing too. But underneath the laugh, a quieter voice is running. Is this it? Is this all there is? Nobody notices. Because you've become very, very good at making sure they don single quotes. You know what the worst part is? You're not even sure you can explain it to anyone. Because every time you try, it comes out wrong. It sounds dramatic or ungrateful. So you go quiet. And the quiet becomes a habit. And the habit becomes a wall. And eventually you start calling the wall independence, because at least that word doesn't hurt. You are not broken. You are not too complicated to be loved. You are someone whose mind moves at a speed that most social environments were never designed to match. And that is a specific, particular kind of loneliness that almost nobody talks about, honestly. Some studies in cognitive psychology suggest that people with higher cognitive complexity, meaning people who naturally think in layers, who instinctively look for patterns beneath patterns, who feel uncomfortable with easy answers. These people tend to experience what researchers call existential isolation at notably higher rates. There is growing evidence that the same mental wiring that makes someone perceptive also makes them harder to reach. But existential isolation sounds cold and clinical. Let me tell you what it actually feels like. It feels like being at a party and smiling genuinely while simultaneously watching yourself smile. It feels like having a conversation and being present in it while also analyzing it, noticing its subtext, sensing what's not being said. It feels like you're always running two programs at once. One that participates in life and one that quietly observes it. That second program, the observer, it never turns off. And that is exhausting. Ways that are almost impossible to articulate. Because the people around you only see the first program. They think they know you. And you let them think that because actually explaining the whole thing would take more vulnerability than most. Encounters seem worth. Because here's what has quietly changed in the modern era. And this is the part nobody is being honest. About we have never produced more content about depth. And yet genuine depth in real human interaction has become harder to find than ever before. We have built a culture that performs introspection without actually practicing it. Think about what the average social interaction looks like now. It's a reference to something you both watched. A shared complaint. A meme. A surface-level check-in before someone's phone buzzes and the moment dissolves. And it's not that people are bad. It's not that they're shallow. It's that the infrastructure of modern life, the notifications, the pace, the constant performance of personality across platforms, has quietly trained everyone to stay at the surface. Because depth is slow, and slow feels like falling behind. But there's something even newer, even sharper happening right now. Think about how AI has changed conversation itself. People now get responses, instantly responses, that are articulate, attentive, always available. And real humans, with their pauses and their mesinses and their need for time, they can't compete with that speed. So real conversation gets shorter, shallower, more transactional. There's also this algorithm-driven feeds have created echo chambers so precise that most people only encounter ideas that already agree with them, which means the experience of being genuinely challenged, the kind of friction that actually creates closeness, is becoming rare. You used to bond over disagreement. Now disagreement is a reason to unfollow. Remote work has added another layer. The casual corridor conversation. The lunch that turned into a real talk, gone for many people, replaced by scheduled Zoom calls with agendas. You can work alongside someone for 2 years and never once meet the actual human being behind the screen. And underneath all of this, there is data that is hard to look at directly. Loneliness has been called a public health epidemic, not a feeling, an epidemic, because it carries the same long-term physical health consequences as smoking 15 cigarettes a day. But you can't stay at the surface. You never could. Your mind goes down whether you want it to or not. You hear a song and you're somewhere. Else you read a sentence and you need 20 minutes to sit with it. Some research indicates that this kind of brain, one where the default mode network, the system responsible for self-reflection and social imagination, stays unusually active, tends to need more from connection, not less. Not because it's broken, because it is built for a different kind of encounter entirely. And the modern world has quietly stopped providing it. Being truly known takes time, and nobody seems to have time anymore. Now, here is the part that I want to say very carefully, because it matters, and I don't want it to land wrong. Some of your loneliness is not being done to you. Some of it, and I say this with full understanding of how much you've genuinely tried. Some of it is a defense mechanism, one that you built probably a long time ago, probably because you had to. Here's what I mean. When you were younger, you may have tried to show people the real version of you, the complicated, layered, too much version, and it didn't go. Well, maybe they looked uncomfortable. Maybe they changed the subject. Maybe they made you feel like a burden. And so your nervous system, which is wired to protect you, quietly built a wall and labeled it standards and discernment. And I just haven't found my people yet. That wall is not a character flaw. It was a completely rational response to real hurt. But here's what happens over time. The wall stops being a response to the past and starts being a rule for the future. You begin evaluating people before they've even had a chance. The bar rises not because of who they are, but because the higher the bar, the safer you are. If no one can clear it, you never have to find out what happens when they do. There is a version of depth that is rare and beautiful, and there is another version that has quietly become a barrier, a quiet distance dressed up as discernment. I want to ask you something, gently. When was the last time you were genuinely, uncomfortably vulnerable with another person? Not performing vulnerability, not sharing something hard while staying slightly in control of how it lands, but actually, truly, letting someone into the room where the real thing lives. Intelligence is brilliant at building exits. Wisdom is learning when to stay. The loneliness you carry is real. The wound underneath it is real. But the wall that was built to protect the wound, that part you have some say in. And that is not blame. That is possibility. There's a concept in psychology called resonance, and it's not the same as similarity. You don't need someone who thinks exactly like you. You need someone who can be moved by the same things. You need a conversation that surprises you, not someone who agrees with you, someone who pushes back in a way that makes the thinking better. You need moments that don't require performance, silences that aren't awkward, presence that doesn't ask anything of you. What you're looking for is not unusual. It's ancient. Aristotle called it philia, the deep friendship built not on usefulness or pleasure, but on shared character, the kind where you don't have to explain why something matters to you, because they already understand that it does. This kind of connection is harder to find in today's world. That's true, but it is not extinct. The neuroscience, and here there is genuine reason for hope, suggests that your brain, the same brain that makes you lonely, is also capable of extraordinary attunement. People with high cognitive complexity, when they trust, tend to be among the most present and perceptive companions another person can have. You read rooms, you remember small details, you ask questions that make people feel like the most interesting person in the world. The same sensitivity that makes you feel like an outsider in shallow water becomes profoundly connecting in the right depth. You are not too much, you've just been in too many shallow rooms. And here's what most people miss right now, quietly. Underneath all the noise and content and performance, there are millions of people feeling exactly what you're feeling in this moment. Watching this video in the dark, pausing it to stare at the ceiling, feeling the specific ache of being present in a world that's mostly just passing through. They are there. They are yours to find. But finding them requires the one thing most intelligent people resist most. It requires being findably. It requires letting the real version of you exist, somewhere where another person can actually see it. I want to leave you with a reframe. You've probably spent years believing your complexity is a problem to be managed, something to be translated, compressed, made more palatable for rooms that weren't built to hold it. You've looked at your loneliness and thought it said something permanent and true about you, that you were too different, too much, too something to belong. But what if that story is entirely wrong? What if your depth isn't a flaw that keeps you isolated, but a compass, pointing toward a rarer, truer kind of belonging that most people never even go looking for? What if the loneliness isn't evidence of your brokenness, but evidence of your standards, not the defensive ones, but the real ones, the ones that know the difference between being in a room full of people and being actually met by someone? You are not lonely because you are too much. You are lonely because you have been asking ordinary moments to hold extraordinary weight. The answer is not to want less. It is not to make yourself smaller or quieter or easier to digest. The answer is to become more honestly, vulnerably, uncomplicatedly you, and to trust that the people built for that version of you will recognize it. Not everyone, maybe not many, but enough. And in this particular specific pain you've been carrying, enough is more than you have ever allowed yourself to believe. You are not a person who is hard to love. You are a person who has been waiting to be loved correctly. And that is not the same thing at all. If you think deeply and feel deeply, if something in this video felt less like content and more like someone finally saying the quiet thing out loud, this channel is for you. Subscribe, because every week we go into the places most people are too busy to look. The inner ones, the uncomfortable ones, the ones that actually matter, and drop a comment telling me the one moment in this video where something clicked. Not because it helps the algorithm, but because you deserve to say it out loud, even once. Take care of yourself tonight.